Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to another exciting edition, hot edition of the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program Teacher Certification course. My name is William, Mr. Krause, and if you're joining us here and wherever you are, please be seated. Thank you for coming, enduring the heat, this beautiful Texas heat. And we are, if you're joining us online, we are covering the responsibility unit of the Peaceful Solution. At the top of the Facebook page, there's a drop-down menu. You can go ahead and click that button, and you'll see 5 manuals. I'm not sure if they loaded the next one for the next coming sessions, but there are 5 up there that last time I looked. The responsibility unit's the 5th unit of the intermediate series. That's where we are tonight. We are in chapter 7. Quickly, well, not really quickly, but we're getting close to the end of this book. But we are very methodically going through it because we're actually not in a hurry to make sure, because we want to make sure that the instructors that will be carrying this torch forward will have a lot of information to get into with their students regarding these topics. Okay, and I hope you've been writing these down, underlining, making notes, writing notes about different videos and things that you've seen, so you can utilize them as teaching tools with your students. Knowledge is power. The more they know, the more traps they're going to avoid, and the better life they're going to have. So we are in chapter 7. You can be responsible for your safety, and Chris last time covered the facts regarding germ warfare. Germ warfare. Sometimes I see it firsthand, germ warfare. It looks like germ warfare sometimes when I see snot rags laying all over tables that aren't thrown away. I know it's not done intentionally, so we can't really call it warfare, but you need to dispose of your Kleenex that you blow your nose with in the trash can, please. Make sure that you don't spread your germs to other people. Remember, that's all part of germs and how they spread. But we're going to be talking tonight about intentional germ warfare. In fact, hopefully you know the difference between intentional and unintentional. Unintentional, of course, would mean it's something that we do because we lack knowledge. We haven't been taught the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program yet. So we don't have the knowledge that we need to make a perfect decision, as we learned in the character unit. Remember that very last thing in the very back after the index? It says, talks about, chew on this or remember this, that, you can't make a perfect decision in your life unless you have gathered all the facts about any situation, okay? And got all the separated the true facts from the false facts. So intentional means, we do something. On the other hand, intentional would mean when you do something, when you have the knowledge, you have that information, you go ahead and choose not to do it anyway, or to do something that is going to bring harm to yourself, others, or the environment. So remember that when we're talking about germ warfare, because I got to go over some things here. Chris covered this last time, and he told you on his way out that I'd be covering a little bit more on it, and I'm going to. And I felt Chris was challenging me on something too, on the COVID-19 information that he had brought, because he jarred my memory about the COVID-19 and what I had previously brought out on that, about where it was actually discovered first. And it wasn't in a Wuhan lab in China that it was discovered. And in fact, we're going to learn about that too, so we can put that theory to rest, because that's all it is a theory. It's not based on true facts. Remember, we always want to get the true facts and separate them from the false. So on page, let's see, what is that? 148 is where we're going to pick up, but we're going to go back first to look at the instructions on what we need to do here. We're going to go to LP7D, E, LP7E. That's on page LP7E. Number 7. And actually it starts on LP7D, sorry. It says, inform students that terrorism, a man-made disaster, can also result in catastrophic loss of life and property. And Chris talked about the terrorism, which germ warfare is part of terrorism. Explain that terrorism is a result of hate, aggression, and violence. You know, that word hate, and they leave it somewhere, and then they walk off. Or they strap a belt around them with shrapnel, bombs and shrapnel, and, so they can blow up some market somewhere. Well, that's not terror. That's part of terrorism, but there's terrorism taking place all over this earth right now. We got a lot of terrorists everywhere, and sometimes they wear ties, suits and ties. Sometimes they're very, very young. It can be in elementary school, middle school, junior high, or high school. They come in all shapes and sizes. Sometimes they're female. They can be male. Terrorism, if you really were hearing what Chris was saying, it's all hatred and violence and aggression. But we can learn to control these emotions, okay, as we learn in the self-control unit of the peaceful solution, which was which unit was that? Number 1, number 2, which one was it? Second? Yeah. Okay. Somebody's awake. I'm just making sure. It's kind of hot out there. It says, have students turn to pages 144 and 145, read the section terrorism, assign 147 for homework, and tell students that one form of terrorism is called germ or biological warfare. And have students turn to 148 and emphasize that terrorism in any form demonstrates a lack of moral responsibility toward others. Okay, and so let's go over to page 148. Well, we're going to go ahead and cover some things here. Why don't you go ahead and put up that first visual for the audience here. It says, and this is on page 148 of your handbook, believe it or not, terrorists can also wage war against innocent people with germs. That doesn't mean that they're waging war against people that have germs. It means that they use germs to wage war. It says, if someone intentionally releases germs or other, now get this. This is the definition I want you to keep it underline, or it's already italicized for you, but it's italicized so you'll know the definition of what this germ warfare is talking about. If someone intentionally releases, intentional, remember what I said about intentional. If someone intentionally releases germs or other biological substances into the air to make people sick, it is called germ warfare. Now, you can take that slide down while I talk about this just for a second. I'll take it a level above what Chris told you. If we learned in the last unit, we learned in the self-control unit, and I believe also in the responsibility unit, we learned about, or not responsibility, but in the respect unit, we learned about the environment. And we learned about STDs. And we learned about how those STDs are created, how they get into the water, the soil, and they're released into the atmosphere. And the destruction that they cause, these viruses, how they mutate, and they rape these other, these bacteria, and they destroy those bacteria's ability to help it rain and other things. We learned about all that in the last units. Now, if you know these things, if you've been instructed in these things, and you know what causes these germs to be released into the air, which STDs are released into the air, then remember, what's that called? Premarital sex, right? Remember that? Premarital sex. These things don't come without a cause. The STDs don't come without a cause. You don't get STDs because you're following the rules. You get STDs because you're breaking the rules, right? So if you know the rules and you don't follow the rules and you create STDs, which are then released into the air, that's called germ warfare. I mean, think about how easy it is to become a terrorist, right? And you didn't even have to go to school to become a terrorist. Germ warfare. So, back up to that slide. I'm just trying to give you things to ponder here. It is also referred to as a biological attack. Some biological agents, such as anthrax, are not contagious and will not spread from one person to the next. And Chris showed, remember the letter that was sent to the senator after 9/11, the anthrax scares that were taking place? Which anthrax, deer and other, I think deer get anthrax. It's something that's in the ground, okay? It says it affects only those who breathe it in. On the other hand, other biological agents, such as the virus that causes smallpox and ricin, are very contagious and can spread from one person to the next by talking at close range, touching, coughing, and sneezing. That's why I told you, throw your dispose of your, we call them snot rags, but I call, your tissue in the trash can. Don't leave it on the desk. Don't leave it laying on the table. Get rid of it. Because what you're doing is you're contaminating the area. Okay? And that's not love. Okay? When we don't think of other people, we don't consider. Remember, we're learning to consider others when we do things. So remember to protect the environment. Your environment is your surroundings, right? So your environment can be your classroom, could be this auditorium, could be your house, your bedroom, your bathroom. Your environment is where you live. It's where you're at. So protect your environment by keeping it clean and healthy, okay? Think of others, don't just think about yourself. All right, so let's go ahead and go to the next visual. Now, we're going to get a definition of biological weapon. Biological weapons, there are any number of disease-producing agents such as bacteria, viruses, says I don't know how to pronounce that word, rockashid, fungus, toxins, or other biological agents that may be utilized as weapons against, get this, humans, animals, and plants. So, because remember, biological, what does biological mean? It means life. It means life forms. So, any life form, if you create some kind of chemical or substance to destroy that life form, that's a biological weapon. It doesn't just have to be for humans, to kill humans. It could be to kill plants. It could be to kill mice. It can be used to kill animals of any kind, sea creatures, etc. See, that takes it to a whole nother level, doesn't it? Because we tend to think of biological weapons as just, I remember back in 2018, they were accusing Syria of using some sarin gas on their own population. Of course, after they went and did a little bit of research and investigation, they found out it was some other players. It wasn't really the Syrian government, but it was some people that were trying to get them in trouble so they could go to war against them and take their oil, which they were already stealing as that war was going on with them. There was some people up in northern Syria just having their way with Syrian oil, just stealing their oil, stealing another country's oil, just taking it and using it, trucking it into Iraq. I think we showed pictures of that here in our classes. How and even President Donald Trump came out and said, let's just be real about this. The only reason we're still in Syria is we need the oil. At least he was honest about it, He told us exactly why they were there and what they were doing and what they were plundering, right? I appreciate when people are honest. Now let's just go ahead and see what we can do to fix this problem, right? Because we shouldn't be taking people's oil. Because when you take people's stuff or you even trespass in their land without permission, what's that called? It's called stealing, right? And we learned from the very earliest of the peaceful solution books You know, the foundation of the whole peaceful solution is do not steal. Do not steal. Okay? Remember, ownership is the very first principle. Ownership. That means everyone owns things, and everyone has the right to decide how their things are being used, right? And, you know, that nobody has the right to take anything from us without asking permission first, okay? We should not be stealing. That's a very important subject that we need to learn and we need to follow. Okay, so let's see. Go ahead and put up that next slide. No, wait. Go back to the last one. I want to make sure that I had that all covered. Oh, also, you can also add in there insects. Insects, not just animals or plants, but also insects, like that honeybee you see, you know, that the insecticide is killing, you know. They're putting those internal pesticides, but they're also spraying them into the air, right? And these bees and other bugs ingest these things, and it kills them. And I think we learned even how you can actually use bugs to kill other bugs that you don't want in your garden or in your field. You can actually release certain bugs to take care of these other bugs, and then you have a natural process taking place of things taking care of things instead of using chemicals and other agents. You know, somebody told me a long time ago, and it made a lot of sense. I never thought about it this way, but, you know, we all tend to think that chemical dependency, you know, we hear the term chemical dependency, and we think of some guy that's using drugs or some girl, you know, that's addicted to heroin or something. Chemical dependency, you know, typically is a drug, somebody that's addicted to drugs, but somebody told me one time, you know, the whole world is chemical dependent because they're using chemicals on everything. They're dependent on chemicals for their agriculture and almost everything they're using chemicals for. So they're dependent on those chemicals. So the whole planet is chemical dependent when we shouldn't be, because chemical dependency is a bad thing. All right, let's go to the next visual there. So I did cover that. You write insects in there. Okay. And I'm giving you an example here. This is from verywellhealth.com. It talks about rat poison as an example. That rat poison is toxic to humans. So I know you're trying to get rid of the rats, but, you know, you could also be getting rid of your loved ones, too, at the same time. I was going to say something about the, well, let me just read it and then I'll tell you. Symptoms of rat poison ingestion. No, I was going to tell you that, you know, on a lot of this rat poison, it tells you this is not harmful to your pet. But it says nothing about the fact that it's harmful to humans. But it'll say on there, this won't harm your pet. But it don't say anything else, just pets. So be careful. It says symptoms of rat poison ingestion include internal bleeding, organ failure, paralysis, and coma. Not much, right? The symptoms associated with ingesting, touching, or inhaling rat poison might not appear until hours or even days after exposure. Emergency treatment is needed as contact with rat poison can lead to death. Common active ingredients in rat poisons or rodenticides have blood-thinning, neurotoxic, and other harmful health effects. Some formulas are more dangerous to humans than others, but all must be handled with care. Now you see how you can be taking your life into your own hands or someone else's life into your own hands by even using something as simple as rat poison. Okay? And these are just things we don't normally think about. I'm trying to give you a little bit of food for thought. Now, I don't want you to eat that kind of food, but I want you to think about what I'm talking about. Okay? Think about how easy it is to actually poison ourselves or the environment or somebody else, which, remember, we have to stop, think, and consider before we do things, because if we don't have this information, we could actually do something that can bring that harm without intentionally even knowing about it. That's called unintentional. Unintentional. You didn't mean to. You didn't know. You weren't educated yet, but now you are. So you should stop and think, and you should start reading the ingredients or read up on these products that we're using so we don't become part of germ warfare. Right? We don't become a biological terrorist. without even realizing it, right? Let's go to the next visual. Oh boy, I always get these that I can't. Okay, let me see if I can read this. This is Chris had talked about last time a class I'd given before about the COVID-19 and when, you know, and let me just say, you can leave the visual up because I'm not going to be able to read that anyway. I'll read the title to you, but let me just say this. When I first heard of COVID-19, of course, everybody heard that, you know, the Chinese made it in a lab, okay? That it was a biological weapon being unleashed on, you know, the population. Can I clue you in on something? Do you know how stupid that actually is? Because if you unleash it on the population, aren't you part of the population? Hello? Have you ever heard of what goes around comes around? Okay, so if you unleash some kind of germ like this, right? You don't think it's going to come back to your people? To you, possibly? You see how stupid this actually is? That these things actually travel through the population. You get that, right? They actually travel, and they don't care who you are. All right? They're going to attack you too. So if you create some kind of agent to kill other people, you're actually signing your own death warrant. Now, when I first heard the Chinese did this, I was skeptical about it because, of course, I always hear, you know, Russia did it, China did it, or, you know, some Muslim did it. Never hear anybody else mentioned. It's always those three categories normally, right? So I always get really suspicious about that, especially when we're having trade wars with certain people at the time, right? Because I remember we were having a trade war with China at the time. So, you know, of course, it'd be really easy to, you know, point the finger at China and say, yeah, they did it. You know, they did it. So I was very skeptical when I heard it the first time anyway, right? But then when I started reading up on it and reading more information, and as time went on, of course, they kept saying this same mantra over and over again. China, Wuhan, developed in a lab in China, right? Well, as time went on, other information started coming out. You know, I'm really glad we have alternative news, you know, sometimes, because you can, you know, and I'm talking, when I say alternative news, I'm talking about Press TV over in Iran and RT News over in Russia, you know. Sometimes you got to go to foreign news sources to get more accurate information. Well, this particular one came out, says SARS-CoV was circulating in Italy before China recognized it even existed. So they're saying in this article here that Italy, I think the first case that they confirmed in Italy was in February of 2020 in a town called Lombardy, China, or Lombardy, Italy. Well, come to find out, it was in some people that had done some testing the year before in 2019. In like, I think September of 2019, they found it in a group of people. They had done some testing, and they went back and looked at it, and they found COVID-19 in those people. And they weren't in Lombardy, Italy. I don't know, in relation to Vince Lombardi, I don't want to put anything in your mind there, you know. But it was called Lombardy. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Here's another article. Live Science. How early was the coronavirus really circulating in Italy? It says, from the article, our results indicate that SARS-CoV-2 circulated in Italy earlier than the first official COVID-19 cases were diagnosed in Lombardy, even long before the first official reports from Chinese authorities, casting new light on the onset and spread of the COVID-19 pandemic, the authors wrote in the study. So notice, Italy was in Italy long before China discovered it, okay? And Italy got hit hard with COVID-19, very, very hard, okay? In fact, I think the Pope missed some services a few times because of all the, and I think there wasn't even anybody in St. Peter's Square because of the COVID-19. You know, everybody had to Remember they had the 6 foot apart rule and everybody had to kind of stay away from each other and everything just pretty much shut down. But Italy got hit very, very hard, okay? So let's put the theory to rest. Quit blaming the Chinese here, okay? The Chinese, I don't know if you've ever met Chinese people, but they're really lovely people, you know, just like the Russian people, just like Muslims I've met. Everybody around this earth, they're beautiful people. These are really great people in every culture, okay? Now, do we have some people that need to learn the peaceful solution? Of course we do. But we did too, didn't we? So we can't put ourselves above anybody else. We were all terrorists at one time in our own right, okay, before we learned the peaceful solution. So, you know, but I remember the author of the peaceful solution saying a long time ago that you could take any terrorist and take them in a room and talk with them about the peaceful solution in a non-threatening way, and by the time you're done, you'll be hugging each other and shaking hands and probably having a meal together. Because you know what? If you're with a terrorist, you're going to treat them the way you want to be treated, right? You're going to be listening to them, communicating in a peaceful manner, in a non-threatening manner. You're going to hear them out. You're going to listen to what they have to say, and then you can make friends out of enemies with a peaceful solution. I've already seen it many, many times. But both parties have to agree to keep it, right? Okay, let's go to the next visual. Here's another article. It says, coronavirus came to Italy almost 6 months before the first official case, new study shows. And guess who this article's from? World Economic Forum. Klaus Schwab and his friends put out this article showing that they even admit that it wasn't in a Wuhan lab, okay? And by the way, if you study the COVID, this is COVID-19, which means it's the 19th in a series of COVID forms. COVID actually was first discovered, I believe it was in 1965 or 1964. I can't remember. The first COVID was discovered in 1964, right around the time they were blowing up some huge bombs all over the earth and opening up holes in the earth and cracks in the ice, and things were coming out of the ice, you know, that were kept there for, you know, thousands of years, unleashing certain biological agents. That's called chemical war, or called germ warfare there, you know, just blow up. Remember Tsar Bomba? 56 megatons over there in Russia. Biggest atomic explosion ever. Now that probably jarred some ice open, didn't it? That probably opened up some tundra, right? And unleashed some things that even scientists are showing. Go read the articles. Just Google or Bing or whatever your search engine is. Just put in scientists worried about what's coming out of the ice, or what germs and viruses are being unleashed because of global warming and the tundra and the ice melting, and what's coming up out of the soil that's been lying dormant there for hundreds, thousands of years. Read about it, because these things are still alive. Okay, they're still alive in the earth. These germs. You know, it's like the author taught a long time ago in the Peaceful Solution. When you die, do you think your germs and viruses die with you? No, they don't. Now they have to latch on to something else, you know, to stay alive. They got to find another host, but they live on, but you go back to the dust where you came from. They go into the soil, they go into other human beings, etc., and they go into the air, okay? But they might kill you, but they live on, okay? And they can also lie dormant in the ice for as long as they're in the ice, frozen in that ice, and as soon as that ice melts, they come back out, okay? It's kind of like those frogs that you can put in the freezer. I don't remember what kind of frog. Was it a tree frog? But you can freeze it. Don't do this, you know, but you can actually freeze it. It's a frog that you can freeze, and it can stay frozen for months. In fact, it does stay frozen for months naturally, and then when the ice melts, it comes back to life again. It's really amazing, you know, these things that these creatures that we have on this earth. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay. Well, this guy here, it's really a shame that I can't read these slides. I know you can read them better than I can. This thing here, I can't read off of it for some reason. But anyway, this particular gentleman, he was living in the 12th century. What kind of warfare did he do? Oh man, what did he do? Because I cannot read this. What did he do? He put something in the water, right? Yeah. He poisoned water supplies. That's what he did. This guy, he lived like 800-900 years ago, and his form of germ warfare was to poison the water supply. Okay, with dead bodies. Okay, because you can poison the water with dead bodies, right? Okay, so he figured out that, hey, if I want to kill my enemies, I can poison their water with dead bodies and, slaughter all my enemies. Of course, that water, didn't that water circulate too, eventually? It goes around, comes around. Not a very smart thing. If I could read that slide, it'd be better. I could print my slides out so I could see them better. Can you put that back up? Next time, okay, note to self. Put slides on phone so I can read off phone. Put slides on phone so I can read off phone. Okay, got it. So I don't remember this guy's name, but he was a terrorist. Okay, but he lived about 900 years ago, and he figured out that you could use water as terrorism. You can use water to kill your enemies. Okay, now you don't think they could do that today? You don't think that they could poison the water supply? I don't see guards around these water towers where they're keeping our water, do you? I see these huge water towers everywhere, and every city has the city's name on it, but I don't see guards around, making sure nobody puts any kind of chemicals or some kind of biological agent in there to start killing people, do you? No. So that's one way they could do it, okay? They could poison the water supply, okay? I'm not trying to give anybody any ideas. I know you guys are going to be okay to talk to about this because you're not practicing war. I hope nobody hears it. That I don't want to give anyone ideas, but I'm just telling you, if you're going to be prepared, your water, you need water for everything, don't you? So you better have some water on hand, too, as part of your emergency kit that we're going to be talking about. I think David's probably going to get into that in the next class. You better have some clean water on hand, because your water can be contaminated in a whole number of ways, or you won't have running water at all because the water can be shut off, right? You can have an earthquake, pipes break, all the water mains are shut off, no water for days. There could be a storm. Anything could take place. I remember in Laredo, we had to go without water. We had to get bottled water and buy bottled water for months because the water supply was contaminated. Okay, it had an unhealthy amount of bacteria in it, and no amount of bleach could kill it, and the water started tasting like Clorox, right? So we had to go to one of those water mills to get our water. Let's go to the next slide. I can't read that. Okay, let's try this one. How about, this is one that Chris talked about too. It was called the Siege of Kaffa. Remember he talked about that germ warfare that took place way back in the 1300s in Crimea. It says, the relationship between the Muslim Mongol rulers and their Christian Genoese tenants was a tense one. The Genoese considered the Mongols violent and uncivilized, and the Mongols saw the Genoese as vain and deceitful. So here you have some Christians and some Muslims going at it, right? Now I want you to remember something. Is there any winner with war? No. And I'm going to prove it to you right now that it's foolish to go to war with somebody. Okay? Because you're both going to suffer. Now, it says, in 1343, when a brawl in a town near Kaffa between Genoese traders and local Muslims ended in the death of one of the Muslims, it was like the spark that ignited a powder keg. Khan Jenneberg, ruler of the Golden Horde, was incensed. He chased the Genoese back to Kaffa and launched a siege that persisted on and off for years. So he surrounded this city. You know, a siege is where we call it trade war today, or we call it, what do you call that? Sanctions. We call it sanctions today, you know, where no medicine can get in, you know, no medicine, no food, no oil or whatever. We block certain things from getting in countries. We call it sanctions today. They called it siege back then. Okay, well, so this Muslim group sieged this Christian town. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Next slide. It says, the tens of thousands of people trapped inside the city walls believed they had received a divine reprieve in 1346. In other words, they thought God intervened on their behalf, when some sort of mysterious new disease swept through the Mongol camp. No medicine could treat it, and the Mongol soldiers began dying by the hundreds. But the residents of Kaffa celebrated too soon. According to the second-hand account of Italian notary Gabriella de Moses, written only 2 or 3 years later, the Mongols, stunned and stupefied by the immensity of the disaster brought about by the disease, and realizing they had no hope of escape, lost interest in the siege. But they ordered corpses to be placed in catapults and lobbed them into the city in hope that the intolerable stench would kill everyone inside. Okay, so you know, here's these the Muslim mongrels out here dying of this disease by the hundreds, right? By the thousands, and they decided, oh man, we're going to have to do something. We're going to have to probably retreat, but first let's lob all these dead bodies in there and hope these guys, you know, get sick and, you know, they die with us, you know, because, you know, what they say, misery loves company. Let's go to the next slide. It says the corpses that rained down on Kaffa seemed to have the desired effect. Disease infected the city, and soon both sides were decimated by it. The Mongols gave up their siege, and the Genoese survivors abandoned Kaffa and sailed back to Europe, landing not only in Genoa, but in ports like Constantinople, Messina, and Venice. Now, Constantinople is modern-day Istanbul, or what do they call it now? Turkey? Turkey. Is it Turkey? Yeah. And Venice is in Italy. So you see this map, this medieval trade routes. These people that were all infected, right? Where did they go? They took this and spread it everywhere in Europe. They took it with them. And they spread it all over Europe. And it became known today as what? Black Plague. And killed millions upon millions of people in Europe. And it hit Italy particularly hard, just like COVID-19 did for some reason. It's really kind of amazing. In fact, well, I better not get into that part of the history, but I think you know some of that history. Let me go back. So both sides, was there any winner? No, they both got infected. But remember, the one side thought, man, I'm so glad the Creator's on our side and those people are out there dying of that disease. I guess what they didn't remember is diseases spread. Right? So if you're sitting there thinking you got it over on your enemy and you're at war with them, sorry, doesn't work that way. There's no winner in wars. Okay, peaceful solution, right? No war. We gotta eliminate the wars. You know, we gotta educate ourselves in peace. All right, let's go to the next visual. Here's another form of germ warfare: the British and smallpox. It says these British. It says a particularly famous use of biological warfare was the deliberate spreading of smallpox among Native Americans by British uh, I can't see that word. Colonizers, sorry, yeah, British colonizers during the 18th and 19th centuries. It is said that blankets contaminated with the smallpox were given to the native tribes in the hopes that the disease would spread and cause a great number of deaths. Okay, so, be careful. Somebody comes bearing gifts, right? Somebody comes like Santa Claus with some gifts. Yeah, why don't you use these blankets, man? We're just, we want you to be warm and fed, And they're contaminated with some kind of disease. Isn't that sweet? Now that would be a love crime, right? Would that be a love crime? It's called hatred, man. Now, you don't think is smallpox contagious? So I would consider that pretty stupid. Have you ever looked up that word stupid in a dictionary? You ever looked it up? Stupid means ignorant, means uneducated, unwise, right? Like, man, you should have went to Peaceful Solution character education program so you could learn, right, these things so you would know what to avoid, what to do and not do, right? It's not a disparaging word in any way. It's just saying that we're foolish. We don't have the information, okay? And if you're choosing to be foolish purposely by not educating yourself, right? You know how some people say, well, what I don't know, I don't want to know because the more I know, the more I'll be responsible for. You ever heard that? Yeah, don't tell me, man. The more I know, the more I'll be, no, dummy. The more you don't know is what's going to continue to bring problems in your life, okay? The more you refuse to learn, you're going to continue to have nothing but trouble. Sickness, disease, death, misery, sorrow, suffering, that's what you're going to have because you're refusing to be responsible and get educated on these things so you can learn the difference between what's okay and what's not okay, what will bring harm and what won't bring harm, what's moral and what's immoral. You see what I'm saying? And what's the very first character trait? Educated, right? Educated, getting all the facts, making sure they're correct before you decide. So, I ain't going to hear no more about Wuhan, right? All right, next slide. Here's another one, Napoleon. He figured out, hey, I know how to kill my enemies. He figured out a very clever way. He knew that malaria was spread in a certain way, in swamps and things. So what he did is he used swamp water to give his enemies malaria. Okay? He flooded certain things to be able to spread malaria all over the place. Another form of germ warfare, and that was back in the 1800s. Okay? So, as you can see, they've been going at this thing for quite a while, right? Coming up with all these clever ideas on how to kill each other. Remember, they're being educated in war. We're being educated in what? Peace. See, there's a difference between peace education and war education, okay? And these guys are brilliant minds, when it comes to military. Napoleon was no slouch. He was a brilliant military mind. I guess it seems like the shorter you are, the better warrior you are. I guess he was pretty short. Those short guys have to compensate, so they think they got to be like that Bainey Rooster, Seem like them real short generals, they seem to be real fierce, But anyway, they were educated in war, so it's not their fault. They were just trained, in these areas where they could have been trained in the peaceful solution, right? Of course, they didn't have that back when Napoleon was around. I like Napoleon ice cream. Is that what it's called? Those different flavors? Is Neapolitan? Oh, Napoleon. Neapolitan, okay. Whenever I see Napoleon, I think of Neapolitan ice cream for some reason. Thanks, Mike. Mike straightened me out on that. Napoleon, okay. All right, let's go to the next slide. Let's see what other terrorists. Okay, this is mustard gas used in World War One. Several gases were used and tested during the First World War, and it talks about, this mustard gas was first used in Belgium in July of 17. Soldiers said they saw a shimmering cloud around their feet. Unfortunately for those soldiers, mustard gas is extremely deadly because it can absorb not only through inhaling it, but also through the skin. This meant that the soldiers' gas masks were ineffective at preventing the attack. It is said that this use in Belgium alone caused 10,000 deaths, okay, with mustard gas. So notice, you don't have to just inhale it, but it can go through your skin as well, so that gas mask was useless, right? Mustard gas, and I think they called it mustard gas because you could smell like mustard, okay? It had the smell of mustard. Okay, let's go ahead and go to the next visual, see what else we got here, what other terrorist tricks they have. Oh, okay. Now, this article came out in 2002 in the New York Times, right after the 9/11 attacks, right after, I think the senators got those anthrax letters. And I don't even remember if there was ricin in one of the letters, too. I don't remember. But I remember a couple of biological agents were sent to people in the mail. But notice who else was up to something at that time. America. It says, traces of terror. The scientists create a live polio virus. Get this. Scientists in America created a live polio virus out of scratch. Let's read it. Scientists reported yesterday that they had constructed a virus from scratch for the first time, synthesizing a live polio virus from chemicals and publicly available genetic information. Get that. They created a polio virus synthetically. Who did? Let's see. The work, conducted by scientists at the State University of New York at Stony Brook, was financed by the Pentagon as part of a program to develop biowarfare countermeasures. In other words, tit for tat. Somebody else is making some bioweapons. Boy, we better have some too, right? Tit for tat. Y'all remember that video? Guy starts out with a rock. The other guy comes out with a gun or a knife. The other guy comes with a gun. One guy comes with a machine gun. Then the guy comes with a bomb, a small bomb. And the last guy comes with a nuclear bomb, right? And they both die. Because, right, is there any winners in war? No. You're both guilty. You're both guilty. So, if you want to live with a sword, if you want to live with war, you can die with war. I mean, it's just that simple. So it says, the scientists constructed the virus using its genome sequence, which is available on the internet. Did you hear that? It's available on the internet. A lot of these drugs and chemicals and things that they mix at home are made with chemicals you can go to Walmart and buy. What is that stuff they're using, that drug? What's that? Meth. Can't you get those things at Walmart? You can go to a store and buy those chemicals and mix them at home and make one of the deadliest, meth. You remember what, I think it was David and Chris and Katan all talked about meth and how just a little bit of that on a police officer's hand, they have to be very careful, can kill them. What's that? Fentanyl. Fentanyl too, right? What do they make that out of? Is that chemicals too? Some kind of chemicals? But yeah, the meth and stuff, you can make that stuff at home, right? Don't do it. I know you guys won't. That's why I can tell you about it. I don't know these other guys that they're being trained in war, you don't know what they'll do. Okay, so it says on the internet. So the scientists constructed the virus, this polio virus, using information on the internet as their blueprint and genetic material from one of many companies that sell made-to-order DNA. So they just went to a company that sells made-to-order DNA, they got some info off the internet, and they created a live polio virus. Polio, not polo, sorry. Well, polo's, well, let's talk about polo, you know, polo. I read about polo one time since I mentioned it. You know where polo started? You know that polo, you know, they have that croquet, it looks like croquet, the croquet mallet. They have a mallet and they hit this ball, you know, they're on a horse and they're running around looking all important, you know, on their horse, and they got this mallet and they're hitting this ball and trying to get it in, I guess, the goal on the other side or something. But that started with soldiers knocking human heads around with clubs. Polo, right? It's just crazy, man. Why does everything stem from war? Doesn't that seem kind of funny that all these things seem to stem from war? Because you wouldn't learn that in the peaceful solution, knocking heads around with bats and stuff, would you? It says, so they made this from stuff from the internet. Amazing. You know, our president, FDR, the 33rd, was he 33rd or 34th? Truman, yeah, 32nd. FDR was the 32nd president. He had polio. Now I'm getting polo and polio mixed up. He had polio. Polio causes floppy and loose limbs, you know, where you can't walk. Okay? It's debilitating. It's crippling. Okay? Yeah, and you can die from it. Okay? So what are they doing in these labs in America making this stuff? You know? So you see, it doesn't matter where you're from. You can be living in the Middle East. You can be living in Russia. You can be in China. You can be in Japan. You can be wherever and making this stuff, right? In a lab, because they just showed you right there on the news. They're making these things in the labs. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so in my waning moments here, Chris left off with this last time about, you know, what you need to do. This is on page 149. You know, if some kind of germ warfare or biological agent or something is released in your area, okay? Because remember, it's not something you can see. You can't see it. And that's what makes it particular. It's kind of like that David, you know, remember he talked about a tornado at night? You can't see it. That's what makes it so dangerous. You don't even know it's coming because you can't see anything. Now, you might hear it coming, but yeah, that's like a worst nightmare, you know, to have a tornado blow through at night. But it's the same thing with these biological agents. They creep in your windows, they creep in your door, they creep, you know, they get through things and they can get into anything and find you. Okay? And you can't even see them. You don't even know they're there. That's what makes them so dangerous, because they're so stealthy. Okay, so in the event that you are in an area that has been contaminated by a biological agent, the first thing you should do is, number one, get away from the area as quickly as possible. It tells you be sure to cover your mouth and nose with several layers of fabric, such as a towel folded several times, a jacket or t-shirt, and this will act as a filter. Because, you know, it's not like you walk around with a gas mask everywhere you go. But as soon as you know something's wrong, hopefully you'll know something's wrong, you know, somehow in time. You might see others dropping around you or something, right? Or you might hear something on the radio. Do what this tells you to do right away. So, then what you need to do, as soon as you're able, put the clothes you're wearing in a plastic bag and tie the bag tightly, then shower. And, you know, Chris went out of his way to tell you, make sure you start, you know, remember what it says here, underline this, wash your body from head to toe with soap, from head to toe. You know, don't be going from your legs down here and up your stomach and then rubbing it in your eyes, you know, bad move, right? How do you get a cold? Can't you just touch something and touch your eye or your nose or something and it gets inside? So remember, follow the instructions. Wash your body from head to toe with soap. Wash and rinse completely at least 3 times to be sure there's no residue of the biological agent left on your skin or hair. And there's a picture there, I don't know if you can see it there, there's a decontamination shower that's portable, you know. Some people buy those and have them just in case, you know, the water's gone, you know, like there's some kind of event where there's a terrorist event where the water goes off, or something occurs and the water's down. You can actually create one of these, you can buy one of these decontamination showers that are portable. Of course, you're going to have some water too, right? Remember I told you, get water, have water on hand. You should have, and I don't remember, I think the general rule is at least a week's worth of water somewhere stashed, somewhere. And even be careful how you keep water, because water can become contaminated if you don't store it right. So get the information. I'm sure David's going to cover that. David and Catan in classes coming up. Number 3, contact the authorities. Tell them what occurred, where it occurred, and why you're suspicious of an attack. Okay? Of course, you're going to be under suspicion too for calling them probably, but oh well. You know, you need to follow the instructions. They're probably going to wonder why you're calling. Hey, how do you know there's something going on? Well, you know, we'll sort all that out later. Just do what this says. Contact the authorities. Tell them what's going on, where it is, and why you're suspicious. Tell them the information. And remember, that's where the peaceful solution comes in too, with the remaining calm. You know, try to take a deep breath. You know, take a few deep breaths, calm down so you can think clearly. And when you're describing things, you know, when you're calling 911 or some kind of emergency personnel, you know, it's not going to help if you're all broken up and you're you know, screaming and you're panicking, as they call it. Number 4, listen to the news on TV or radio for official information on what the signs and symptoms of the disease are, what the biological agent was released, or what biological agent was released, and where you could seek help if necessary. You know, one of the most important things to remember, don't think this can't occur to you. Okay? Don't think this can't occur to you. This can occur to you. That's why you're learning about it. Anybody is susceptible to germ warfare. Not only that, nuclear warfare. Okay? And decontamination, learning how to decontaminate from even nuclear fallout, is extremely important. Knowing how to keep your water from being contaminated, your food items from being contaminated, all those things are very necessary to learn in order to prepare and be responsible. And I know in the upcoming classes, you're going to learn more about it as we proceed and as we finish this beautiful responsibility unit here. The next class is going to be on 7/7/2024 at 5:30 p.m. Central Time. Nice try, Mike. He told me 6/7, but I caught him. 7/7/24 at 5:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. We hope you'll join us. Thank you for joining us this evening. Have a great evening.